Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to talk about the movies. I am your host, Josh Lindsay, and today, of course, we are with Jason Rugg.
Hey there.
And we finally got rid of Sky.
No, I am not Sky.
Just kidding. We didn't get rid of Sky, but as you all know, he likes to travel and couldn't be here. And so I took advantage of this to bring in Christian Taylor, a good friend of mine.
Hi, Josh.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Something you should know about Christian, she is a film producer, a amazing voiceover actress, which you can hear her on Pandora, right?
You can hear me on Pandora and a bunch of other radio stations, or you could just go to my website, neighborladyvo.com.
Very good.
And you can listen to all of my demos and samples there, or on YouTube. Just,
I think the first time I heard you, I was blown away because I didn't believe it was you. Because, I mean, you're just, obviously you were doing something that the marketing company wanted you to do to sound a certain way, right. And you did it, and it was great, and I had no idea it was you. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so. Thank you. Well, there's a certain sound. People say you have a great voice, you should do voiceover, but it takes a lot of, classes and stuff to learn how to do it.
Yes, I agree, just based on learning about your experience. Also, Christian is on the Phil Vischer podcast, so you can hear her there as well.
I am. If you guys haven't heard the Phil Vischer podcast, check it out. It's
definitely
pretty awesome.
Definitely. So I'm glad to have Christian here. She has 35 years of experience of working in the entertainment industry, and she's also a movie fan and a good friend, so I'm excited about today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. You're welcome.
Okay, so our format is something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. And let's start with something old. Christian, what do you have for us today?
So you had asked me to come up with something old, and I went through just a whole bunch of choices, and I finally settled on one that is our family favorite. And so I wanted to introduce you to this. I mean, maybe you've heard of it. I don't know how many people have, but it's a pretty old one. It's from 1990.
Woo,
so we're
way back in 1990.
We're going way back. That's about 27 years because I had a son that was born that year.
Okay.
And this is a Steve Martin. Let me see if you can guess who it is. Steve Martin, Rick Moranis, Joan Cusack. Does that give you any hints?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed. It hasn't come to mind. Steve Martin and Rick Moranis.
Mm-hmm. It's a comedy.
Joan Cusack?
And Joan Cusack, yep.
All right, lay it on me.
My Blue Heaven.
Oh!
Have you seen it?
Yeah, he's like a gangster in it, right?
So Steve Martin is this, larger-than-life gangster with an awesome heart of gold. He's adorable and funny, but he's a lot of trouble.
Okay.
And he's a, pathological liar, but you just gotta love him. And Rick Moranis is this uptight, FBI agent that just... he's just by the book and does everything right. And, this tells the story of this improbable friendship that develops between the two of them and how they actually help each other out. So it's sort of like the Odd Couple reimagined, really. And one of the reasons it's a family favorite is there are some phenomenal lines in this movie that we've continued to quote. I've been married now 24 years, so we've continued to quote these lines now for the last 24 years. The shoes, right? The shoes are tragic. Joan Cusack, says she never makes a mistake. She's only been wrong once. And, Steve Martin says, the shoes, right? The shoes are tragic. That was one of them. He talks about arugula being a vegetable. My family finds that very funny. They'd never heard of that. So I definitely recommend you checking it out.
Rick Moranis, he's one of my favorite actors who did very little. Like after Ghostbusters, or maybe Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was the last time we saw him.
Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I always wish he did more, but he just kind of went on and did his own thing after acting.
Well, I think My Blue Heaven is after that.
Is it really?
But it's a lesser known. If we only had somebody to fact check that.
What is it, Jason? Was that the last film he did?
The last thing he did was in 2007. And it was Bob and Doug McKenzie's 2-4 anniversary.
Oh, well, because he was on that comedy show.
Strange Brew?
Wasn't Strange Brew based on some characters in
I feel like it was.
Wow, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is later than My Blue Heaven.
Okay. That was a big one.
Yeah. That was a great one. I really like that one. Yeah, that's another one, old one. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes.
It's a good one.
Okay, I'm going to check it out, My Blue Heaven. My Something Old. So today, we're talking about a drama / comedy family thing. So I'm thinking...
You calling that a family thing? Or do you mean it's about a family?
It's about a family.
It's not a family show.
Oh, no. Something new is not family friendly. The movie for something old is Terms of Endearment.
Oh, I love that one. I was actually thinking about that because it's Jack Nicholson.
Yep.
And it is Shirley MacLaine. And it is these old family relationships. It's sort of like Steel Magnolias that takes these.
It was between that and Steel Magnolias.
Yeah. I was thinking about those two myself.
Well, Deborah Winger's in it.
Oh, yeah.
And she's the one that, gets cancer and her husband, has an affair.
That was after An Officer and a Gentleman, which is another fantastic old film. But anyway, we're talking about Terms of Endearment.
Well, it is a serious drama, but it has a lot of humor in it.
Yes.
The things I remember about this movie, though, are how much I hate Deborah Winger's ex-husband, because what a lousy husband he is.
Oh, I know what you were about to say.
And then I do love, what did you think I was about to say?
I don't want to say it.
And then Jack Nicholson and Shirley MacLaine's relationship is fantastic in it, because he's this cool former astronaut that just wants to be left alone, and Shirley MacLaine's kind of overbearing, but then they hit it off, and he becomes the good neighbor and the stand-up guy, right? But then the other thing was the music.
Oh, yeah.
That's
so good.
That is classic cinema soundtrack right there.
Super soundtrack.
Yes. So, all right.
Well, and it is very sad, but also very heartwarming at the same time.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it is a tearjerker. Be prepared with the Kleenex,
Right. Yeah. And that's what I like about it, because it deals with real things in not a sunshiny, fake way, but it does end in a kind of uplifting, redemptive, hopeful.
Yeah. What year was that? That was a long time ago.
1983.
Oh, my goodness. I was a junior in high school.
I was.
Were you even born?
Yes, I was born. I was 9.
Oh, goodness. So when did you watch this?
Well, it was on VHS years later. I don't know. I mean, maybe I was 9. I have no idea.
That movie reminds me of another movie, which I can't remember the name of, but maybe you will. Do you remember the movie with Jodie Foster and Jack Nicholson, where he is this uptight OCD person? He's a writer.
Oh,
and she's a waitress, and she waits on him every single day.
You mean Helen Hunt?
That's what I meant. Did I say Jodie Foster? Yes,
yeah.
Helen Hunt. What is that?
As Good as It Gets?
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
As
great.
Good as It Gets.
That's a great one. Yes. That is a favorite of mine as well.
But he kind of plays a similar, jerky.
He really does. I mean, he's
got
jerk.
that down.
Yes. That's actually, he does that in a lot of movies.
He does. It just must
About
be the way.
Schmidt is about that is that way too.
So you picked that just because it deals with the family dynamics of our new film.
Yes, great transition. So something new. Today we are talking about the movie The Meyerowitz Stories, new and selected.
Yeah, why is it new and selected?
Well,
because they're making a new story to add to their library of family stories?
Because it's told in chapters. They literally have titles where they introduce the characters by name, and they have a card that says Michael, know, and so they're just little stories are giving a glimpse into these characters' lives. Mm-hmm. And so something real quick, I'll tell you about the story. It came out this year, only on Netflix. It's the writer-director is Noah Baumbach, who you might know him. I don't know. Did you ever see the Squid and the Whale?
Squid and the Whale, yeah.
And then he's got a writing credit for the fantastic Mr. Fox.
What sounds like he is very partial to dysfunctional families.
I think so. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he specializes in. The movie stars Dustin Hoffman, Adam Sandler, Elizabeth Marvel, Emma Thompson.
Who's fabulous.
Yes. Ben Stiller. Did I say Adam Sandler? I think I did.
Yes.
Okay.
So and are we making a proposal about this?
Yes. So I'd like you to go first. You're a guest.
Okay.
And this is your first time doing this. So you saw this?
Yes.
What was your proposal?
My proposal is that this is the best movie that Adam Sandler has ever done.
I agree.
And I will tell you that I am not an Adam Sandler fan.
Really?
When I saw that you're like, this is going to be the new movie, I was like, oh. What saved me was I love Dustin Hoffman, I love Ben Stiller, and I love Emma Thompson. So I'm like, okay, I can't fathom how they're doing a movie with Adam Sandler, but I'll give it a shot.
Well, let me ask you a question before we jump further into this movie. Did you see The Wedding Singer?
Yes,
See,
a long time ago.
That was, in my opinion, his best movie until now. Because it wasn't the over-the-top, stupid plot, just ridiculous Adam Sandler. It was a sweet love story that
I'd forgotten about
took
that one.
his sensibilities and his humor, and it wasn't stupid, it was sweet, but very funny at the same time.
Yes.
And then the other one was Punch Drunk Love, which I never saw.
I never saw that either.
But he got good reviews for that one.
I was just honestly really shocked. I had forgotten about The Wedding Singer, but even so, it is more of a lighthearted comedy. This is a heavier drama.
Oh, big time.
You know, and it's got some serious nuances with his character. And I think he plays the most difficult and divided out of all the family members, you know, and I think his role is the most challenging. And so that's why I really respected the job that he did in this film.
Oscar worthy?
I don't know that I mean, it could be in consideration, but when you think about all the other movies that are
gotcha.
probably going to be there.
Yeah.
But I will say, it is very meaty. And the other, I was struggling with my proposal because I really felt like the other thing I wanted to propose was I proposed that this is art imitating life. I really feel like this is a fantastic example of real life stuff, you know, where family is concerned. And so I think it put its finger on the heartbeat of like the stuff families are dealing with right now.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm gonna share my proposal now.
What is your proposal?
All right, my proposal. I propose that the Meyerowitz Stories works because of its humor and honesty about family. So I agree with you because it was the thing I walked away from. It was even though like I couldn't necessarily relate to the specifics of the things that happened in their lives growing up because Dustin Hoffman plays a father and he has 3 kids.
How do you do this without us giving it away?
Oh, we totally spoil it. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was going to say, how do we talk about this without like, you know?
No. Spoilers ahead, and don't be shy. So,
okay.
So Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and Elizabeth Marvel are siblings, and they're adults now. They're dealing with their father, Dustin Hoffman, who is an artist. And he's a semi-famous, semi-successful sculptor.
No, I wouldn't even give him that. He's a sculptor who wanted to be famous.
Well, that's true.
And he ended up not realizing his goals, so he ended up being a teacher, or a professor, or a, you know.
Well, he did have some level of success. I mean, the house they bought because of him. Like he had a very
early on, yeah. I guess.
And they were in the movie. They're selling in the beginning. They're selling the house because they're running out of money because his success has peaked. You know, it's
right.
over. But I think there was a period of time where he was like up and coming, and then kind of he went down, and his friend continued to soar.
Right.
And so I think that was where some of the pain came in because some of this film deals with what is success, what is failure, because Dustin Hoffman looks at his children as failures because they don't live up to his standards of success, which for him, he's an artist. And so Adam Sandler's a musician, but he's talented, but he didn't pursue it. So he's viewed as a failure. Ben Stiller is a successful businessman,
but he didn't pursue his creative arts.
Right. So he's a failure, right?
Right.
And then I forget the story with Elizabeth.
Why is Elizabeth a failure? When I think about it, he just doesn't focus on her at all. Like, you know.
She's kind of not there, which is, they make light of that where someone says, oh, I didn't know he had another son. And then the sister's back there and says, and a sister, you know, or a daughter, right? You know, and because she's kind of the shy recluse, and that's
right.
Because she kind of like lives out how her father sees her.
Yeah, well, and I think what was so, I don't know. I think when I look at why he was a failure or wasn't a success,
Dustin Hoffman.
Yes, his character is the same reason he's not a successful father.
Oh, this is good. Let's hear it.
You know, it's just what he values and how he spends his time and he's almost a shell of a man, right? Whereas the other, his friend, who is this successful, he's bigger than life, you know? He's passionate, you can tell, he's exciting, whereas Dustin Hoffman's character is just very flat, very self-focused, not self-aware and not aware of others. And I think that makes him an unsuccessful artist, and I think it makes him an unsuccessful father.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So can you talk more about like what stood out to me about the relationships as the kids had with the dad, and then how it played out as parents? Like Adam Sandler, for example, he has a daughter that's going off to college, and they are best friends. And I wouldn't necessarily call Adam Sandler's father of the year, but the thing that he does so right is that it's so clear that you can tell that his daughter knows that she's loved by him. Like, that is obvious.
Right.
But Adam Sandler is hurting because he does not feel loved by his father at all. And what struck me was, because I've seen this in my own mother's life, so my grandmother grew up in the Depression. And so there was a lot of fear and things like that. And so she carried that in as a mother. And so my grandmother, when she was raising my mother, there was a lot of strict rules and guilt and like keep everyone home for safety and fear and that kind of stuff. And so when my mother raised us, like, she was not that way. I mean, she really pushed the pendulum the opposite way, because she didn't want us to, have that same fear and guilt hanging over us, that sort of thing. And that's what I saw with Adam Sandler, where like my dad didn't love me at all. And then so he was like, there's a funny scene, well, it's kind of funny, where the daughter goes to film school and she makes a film, and it's terrible, and it's stupidly rated R film she makes. But Adam Sandler, he's like, that's pretty good, right? That's a really good film that she made, right? And you're watching and you're like, that's a horrible film. But he's such a dad who just wants to love and encourage his daughter.
But what's interesting, where his weakness lies, I think, is that in his flawed nature. Yes, it's true, he loves her and he wants to be supportive of her art. But by the same token, not only as a viewer am I looking at that film going, that's a horrible film, I'm looking at that, I'm watching him watch that video, I'm a parent, he's a parent, and I'm sitting there going, why the heck is he okay with his daughter making this movie, right? There are no like boundaries or lines for him. There's no tough love. It's like everything's okay.
But I think that's because he's pushed the pendulum so far the other direction from his father, where his father, like, you could do nothing right for the father.
Right.
For Dustin Hoffman.
Now there's nothing wrong for him.
She could do no wrong.
Right. Well, and by the way, let me just say about her film school films, they need to be watched in the context of, like, only adults watch these movies. Like, it's an adult rated R film.
Right.
But you would think even as and you see her in a compromising relationship as a young girl on screen, you would think as a dad, he would want to kill that guy.
Right. Yeah, with that, we don't want to get into the topic of her film school film, but
I just want to warn you.
Right. It's one thing
I'm not okaying that, by the way.
It was supposed to be funny, and it wasn't funny to me. It was disturbing, which I think it was supposed to be disturbing, too.
I didn't even want to watch that.
Right, no. And I think the humor wasn't the film. The humor is Adam Sandler's response, where, like, you're disturbed by this film, and you're looking at Adam Sandler, the parent, like exactly what you said, like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Say something to your daughter.
Yeah, be a parent.
Right, be a parent, right. But I think that's what makes us honest, is like, who's a perfect parent? Like we all look at our parents at some point, like, well, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to make sure I do it, differently. And then you become a parent, and all of a sudden, you do things they did, and good and bad, and you do things you said you would never do.
Right. What I love is, so I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and the youngest is just now sort of entering that parenting stage. And, I don't know if you recall this, but I remember before I had kids, I could look around at all these parents and tell, like, oh my gosh, they are doing this wrong, and I would never do this, and I'm going to have my bedtimes organized, and I'm going to blah, 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 right? And now, as a parent, I feel that judgment, from younger kids, like at how messed up my kids are or whatever. And the truth of the matter is, truly, like, there is no rule book. There is no rule book. You cannot go to school to figure out how to be the best parent ever. And we're all going to make mistakes, and sometimes we're going to be fantastic parents, and other times we're going to be terrible.
Right.
And what is so interesting about this new film is as they walk through, the three siblings, as they walk through this trauma of their father getting ill and possibly dying and having to come together to work through how they handle this, all of a sudden, all this healing takes place.
Right.
You know, they like scabs are ripped off, and they deal with the stuff that's been like layered over. And they walk away from this, you know, in a completely new space, new understandings of each other, new understanding and appreciation of their father. And in a sense, all these childhood characteristics that never matured, at the end of this film, they've sort of been set free from those chains and have a new, like, ability to go on in a new phase of their relationship.
And part of the humor is watching them try and figure that out. Like,
right.
like one of the funniest things is when Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller,
they're beating the pulp out of each other.
Right. They're trying to deal with these things and communicate with each other, and they do have this. They can't even fight right. Like, you know, they're terrible fighters, but it's really funny watching them figure this out. And then, you know, having like their sister, they learned something that happened to their sister when she was younger, and then how they want to defend her, and their response is to beat up a car and
destroy the car,
like, and think that would make it better for the sister.
And the car, the owner of the car is like 85.
Right.
You know?
And it was totally pointless, but that's what some of the humor. Absolutely.
Yes, that is funny. Yeah, you know, it's just interesting because when there's so much hurt passed on, right? Like hurt from the father and even hurt from the mom, you know, who doesn't really help to be a healing factor in the family, you know? Are you talking about Emma Thompson?
Yes.
Emma Thompson?
Yes. Emma Thompson?
She's the stepmom, though.
She's the stepmom.
But even so, you know, she's so flighty and so, like, not really involved that she doesn't help to be a unifying, healing presence in the family of this brokenness, you know? And so I think she contributes to the problem in a lot of ways. And I think what's interesting is you have these people all behaving badly, even the siblings to one another, but yet somehow they're still able to be a family, and they're still able to have these closer relationships.
Right. And as much as, like, if we were to describe all the things that Dustin Hoffman did or didn't do for his kids, like, everyone would be like, just walk away from this father. He's not worth the time. Like, be done with him, right?
Right.
But the reality is he has family. He's the father, and like you said, that they can still love each other as a family in spite of the difficult things that happen. I once again, I think that's where a lot of the honesty is coming from, and they don't handle it in perfect ways. They all handle it in good ways and weak ways and different ways, but it does end in a way that, like, I think is redemptive, where they're dealing with it.
I have to say, though, like, I didn't end this movie uplifted.
Really?
Did you?
Oh, I did.
You did?
Yeah. When there's a moment with Adam Sandler where he stands up for himself to his father.
Right.
But but the funny thing about it was one of the most pathetic but sweet ways to stand up to his father.
Yeah.
And he did it in his own way, and he was able to, because his father was like telling him, do this, do that, and finally he was like, no, I'm gonna go do my thing right now. And it was anyway, the way it played out was it was his way to stand up to him, and you were rooting for him. You're like, he's got a backbone, like he feels good about himself, you know. But why did you walk away feeling from?
Well, maybe I was trying to figure that out. I mean, the whole art school part of it really bothered me. Like, I just was like, why did I have to see that? I didn't want to see that. But there wasn't any real change in Dustin Hoffman's character.
That's true, but I don't know that that's
I know that wasn't the point.
Right.
I know that wasn't the point. Like, the point is in Adam's, and even Ben Stiller's character, and even the daughter's character, there was character transformation between all three of those.
Yes, their relationship definitely changed.
Right. But when you see a father that horrible go through what he went through, his physical illness and basically dying, you kind of expect there to be,
See, that's the, I call it the Regarding Henry.
Oh, what a great film.
Okay.
You didn't like it?
There were things I really like about Regarding Henry, Harrison Ford and
Emma, what's her name?
Benning.
No,
Annette Bening, where it's what you want to have happen.
Yeah.
You've got a jerk of a lawyer, and he's not a good husband, he's not a good father, and then he gets hit on the head, and he has amnesia, and all of a sudden he's a good guy, and it's the happy ending, right?
Yeah.
But when does that ever happen? It's fun to watch, and we all want it to happen.
it does happen though. I have one relationship in particular where a horrible thing happened, and you would think like nothing ever good could come of it, and that person was transformed and it changed a relationship, metaphorically. Yes, but I get your point.
So what happened?
Your point is I wanted him to be the loving father and to be. Yes, I live in a Disney world. No, I will not.
There you go.
I was raised on Wild World of Disney, Wonderful World of Disney.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, this would be a good transition for something borrowed, because we're talking about a character here that is tough to love, and he's done bad things, and what does he deserve his kids to love him and take care of him while he's dying, and how do they respond to him, that so forth. And so right now we're in the midst of this crazy time, I think, of like every day it seems like there's a new Hollywood actor, producer, politician who is being accused of sexual harassment. And just because it's prevalent, but women and some men are having the courage to stand up and say, this was done to me, right? And so it's very eye-opening. The question is, how do we respond? And there was an article, there's an article in Time magazine featuring Sarah Silverman, who has a show called I Love You, America. And it was a brief article in Time, and it's talking, the question she's asking is, can you love someone who did bad things? And I'm going to read a quote. It says, this is her. She's talking about her friend, Louis C.K. They've been friends for 25 years. Apparently, she had no idea that he did these horrible things to these women. And now this has come out that he's admitted it. Yes, I've done these horrible things. How can she respond to her friend? And her quote was...
Well, and to others, the victims.
Right. And I do want to emphasize in the article, she's processing it. She's not sure how to deal with it.
Right.
And she says, how I respond to him is actually kind of irrelevant right now. The most important thing is, how do we respond to the victims?
Right.
And she did say that. But
it is a video. She gave a monologue.
Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
She gave the monologue in the beginning of her I Love America show, and she dealt with this. So the article is just reporting on the video.
Yes. Okay. I just read the article. I didn't watch the video.
Oh, you should. It's good.
Oh, okay. I will. All right. And so should you, our listening audience.
Yes.
But here's a quote. It says, this is Sarah Silverman speaking towards the end of the article anyway. I hope it's okay if I am, one, very angry for the women he wronged and the culture that enabled it, and also sad because he's my friend. And so she's asking for permission to not hate this guy, or maybe hate the things that he did, but can I still have empathy or sadness towards this friend and have similar, or at the same time have other feelings of anger of how did this happen? How did we let this happen?
Yeah.
So respond, Christian.
Yes. Well, I think this is such I'm so glad you chose to borrow this, because it is a relevant topic, and it is such a weird and strange time, but it is a wonderful time. It is way over time for this to happen and for it to be a conversation in the public square, because this story is as old as time. I mean, it goes all the way back to the first stories that we have of this kind of thing. And, I've been in this industry, and I've been a woman. And so not that men don't experience this, but I certainly have as a woman, where from the time I was probably 10, I remember being attacked by boys. And, it's always been a difficult thing for me. And I worked in Washington on Capitol Hill from the time I was 13. So there is a creep list, and I knew about it. And I did experience creepy stuff with, politicians and staffers, and I saw things and I heard things that no, teenager ever should. And in this industry, I have definitely been limited in what I can do because I wouldn't make bad choices. So I'm incredibly relieved that this is now, a topic of conversation. But what's interesting is I do think, just like in this movie where, the Adam Sandler swings from, one side of the pendulum to the other, I think in society, when this stuff comes out, we all jump on the bandwagon of wanting to, condemn everyone like with one fell swoop, just like, everyone has dropped every single thing that Louis C.K. had going on. And out of all of the confessions, his rings the most true to me. Mm-hmm. He right away said, yes, I did this. And he right away said, now I've said it's true, and I've said I'm sorry, and now it's time for me to listen. And I think probably is why it's difficult for Sarah. She's known him for 25 years. She knows him as a person, but he made some terrible choices. How do you handle that? And I think she's trying to walk that middle line, and I commend her for that, because I do think forgiveness. I mean, I'm a Christian, and so for me, I think that grace and that mercy. Who are we to cast the first stone? She may not have done something that horrible, right, but I am sure she has had her fair share of things she would take back.
Right, and that was the first thing I thought of, where it's hard to in light of what Louis C.K. has done and other men have done, in this discussion, it's hard to have that cast the first stone discussion, because the question is can you love someone who's done bad things? It's like, well, I want to say to Sarah, like, well, don't you want people to love? I mean, like, you're not guilt free, right? I mean, you've done some bad things, and like you said, maybe not in society's eyes, not as horrible, but as what Louis C.K. has done. But all of us have done bad things. All of us have wounded others, right,
at whatever level, and truly, whenever we have put ourselves or our wants or our desires above those of our neighbor or our family member, we've made them a victim. That is a bad thing. And so we're all guilty of that,
right. And I think, like in this movie, the Meyerowitz story, a lot of it's just dealing with how do I respond to someone who did and they have a list of specific bad things. And I think that's what's in this article, is how do I respond? And there's a pastor, Dr. Ed Stetzer, who has actually been on the Phil Fisher podcast.
I love him.
So he was preaching at Moody, and I think it was 2 Sundays ago, and he was on NPR, which I thought, oh, wow, they were interviewing him on NPR, All Things Considered, and they had a blurb where he was saying, when women or any victim comes and says, this happened to me as a Christian, what should our response be? And the response should be, I believe you. Not questioning or trying to defend the other person and his actions or whatever. It was like, and like, what a crazy thing to have to say in front of a group of people, like, hey, look, this is how we should respond. When someone comes and says something bad happened to them, you should say, I believe you. But that's the world we live in, right? Where a lot of people are saying, well, that, those women are making that up. That's not true. It's exaggerated. And the like what Sarah Silverman said in this article, the first response should be towards the victims and should be, I believe you. And I thought that was profound and kind of sad that we had to say that.
Yeah, but I think that what is incredibly difficult, it's much easier for me to want to extend grace or forgiveness to someone who stands up and said, yes, I did this and it was wrong, mm-hmm, than other prominent figures who have been accused of even worse behavior,
right.
who say flat out, in spite all evidence to the contrary, I didn't do it. And so I think that's what's tough in our culture, is that, how do you deal with that,
Good. Well, I guess that's why we have laws and things like that for on one side of it. The other side of it, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people seem to be above the law, which is.
Yes. Yes. No, that is true, which is unfortunate. Well, we are running out of time, and so we're going to end on something blue. So something that blew your mind or blew chunks. Mm-hmm. Christian, did something blow your mind or blow chunks this week for you?
Yeah, actually, I have been thinking about this question because I knew it was coming up, and I was originally going to answer Outlander because that series, it blows my mind in its complexity and depth and cinematography and acting. However, that was superseded this week by the fact that I am in the middle of producing 2 films. And so this is as deep as I've ever gotten and as most responsibility as I've ever had in producing a film. And I've just been blown away with the complexity, the budget, the steps that it takes. I've learned so much about the distribution and about, just so much that I'm like, how does anything ever get made?
Right.
And then you look at the list on Netflix or any of all these movies that someone has paid money to make. and they're there now, and you're like, somebody actually paid money for these things to be made. Because trying to get them done and completed, this week, the 2 movies I'm working on, the first one is called The Letter, and it is a 1920s murder mystery that is told in the H.P. Lovecraft. It's got a H.P. Lovecraft twist.
What's H.P.?
H.P. Lovecraft was a horror science fiction writer back in the early 1900s, and he wasn't famous at the time, and he died as a pauper, but he inspired just about every cultural, Batman, it was sort of inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. And so he has become this huge cult figure with lots of books and movies taken from his style. And so that's what this film is. And we're in 20 days of shooting, and I was in post-production for it for a month and a half. It was in production for 3 years, and it's only $100,000 budget.
Wow.
So, but it's a period piece. I am casting up to 300 extras, all who are working for free. It's just we're in locations that are an hour and a half away. So the logistics and the time and the money and the schedules, it just is mind blowing to think of what comes together to make just this tiny movie.
Sure.
And then the other one I'm working on is The Girl Who Wore Freedom. You can look these up on IMDb, by the way, and there also have Facebook pages. You can like those.
So The Letter and The Girl Who Wore Freedom?
Yeah, The Girl Who Wore Freedom is a documentary that I'm doing, which is based on D-Day and the World War II story of the Americans storming the beaches of Normandy. And it is told from the French perspective. So I had this story land in my lap where I had to go to France because my son was in the army, and I met these amazing people who were alive during the occupation and the liberation and now have incredible stories to tell. So one of those happened this week, which also blew my mind. Not long ago, one of these French people, they stumbled upon a radio signalman's nest that was up in the top of this building. And the roofers were taking off the roof, and they found it. It was a time capsule, and it was untouched since 1944.
Wow.
And so this guy went in there, and he was getting the things to put in sort of like his little museum, and his son noticed a floorboard that was misplaced, and he opened it up, and there were letters in there from the soldiers' family and friends.
Okay.
And when I took them out and looked at them, this Frenchman said, "I've been trying to find the family, but I can't." And I looked at it, and the family was from Waukegan.
What?
Yeah, which is right near us. And I was like, oh my gosh, I will help you find him. And I came home, and within 4 weeks, I had found the family, and the soldier's widow is still alive. And so she's 90-something. He had passed away 9 years ago. And she said, oh my gosh, you've given him back to me.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and so we hope to take her to France so she can see the candy wrappers that he had, you know, on the floor of where he was and stuff like that. So my mind is just in the midst of these two movies, and here we are talking about film, and that's how my mind is blown.
Well, I should have gone first because I can't follow that. It's way more interesting than I got. So,
well, what do you got?
Well, Blue Chunks. I picked a Netflix film since we were talking about a Netflix film, and it was Okja.
Oh, you didn't like Okja.
Well, yeah, Okja, O-K-J-A. It's a Netflix original. Tilda Swinton, Paul Dano, Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's about a girl and her pig, basically. You know, where she has these.
It sounded heartwarming.
It did, and it looked quirky, and you know, kind of had that dark side to it, but kind of a cool, quirky, dark humor side to it, and it was a little disturbing. Had entertaining parts about it, but I left kind of blech afterwards, and I was really hoping for more, especially with that cast. It could have been great. What
was it missing?
Well, one, it was too dark. It doesn't have to be a family film, but it could have been. Like, they just put stuff in there they didn't need to. It was just too dark, and I won't get into all that. But and then the other part was, like, Jake Gyllenhaal played a character, and Tilda Swinton played characters that were over the top. They were like just these weird, quirky characters, and they almost, especially Jake Gyllenhaal, just took it too far. We're like, I'm not believing this anymore. Mm-hmm. Because there were other characters like the girl or Paul Dano or I don't know who else that were like believable, and then these other characters were just it was hard to buy into
true.
it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So overall, it didn't work for you.
Yeah. I mean, if you like those actors, I'd say check it out. But other than that, it didn't work for me. So
okay.
But anyway, well, thank you for being on the podcast.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for
fun.
having me. Super fun. Thanks, everybody.
We'll have to do it again. So, all right. So today we talked about My Blue Heaven.
We did.
Terms of Endearment, the Meyerowitz Stories, Christian's film, The Letter, and The Girl Who Wore Freedom, Okja.
We talked. Oh, one other thing I forgot to tell you. So one other film I want you to check out. So in the research for The Girl Who Wore Freedom, I stumbled upon a film called Apocalypse Hitler, and it is a French film. I watched it over in France, and it tells the rise of Hitler and history that I had never heard before, because it's told from a French writer and a French author. And so it's a very different perspective of a film than an American filmmaker would write.
Okay.
So you can find it on Amazon, like, for sale. But yeah, Apocalypse Hitler.
Apocalypse Hitler. That sounded like a comedy to me when you said that, like a Mel Brooks kind of thing.
No.
All right.
Springtime for Hitler.
There you go. That one, yeah. All right, so wrapping up, I don't know if you noticed, I'm wearing my Superman tie today.
Yes, I see that.
The Justice League came out, I guess technically yesterday. I don't know that I'm going to run out and see this film. So if anyone listening saw it and they want to put, comments or whatever, we'd love to hear about it. Or Jason, you're going to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Of course, Jason's going to see it.
I'll probably go see it, but
What's that mean?
The reviews have not been great.
You're not married. You don't have a family. What else are you going to do? You're going to go to the movies for your...
He has a whole list of other movies he has to catch. Do you know he hasn't seen Die Hard?
What?
See?
You got to keep bringing it up.
That's right. Please put a review on iTunes. You can watch us on YouTube if you want to see what we look like. One thing, we are, I don't know what you'd call us, a derivative of the Phil Vischer podcast. We were born, we exist. We're a spinoff, and we exist. We do this for free, but it does cost money to do this. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do it through the Patreon site. And how can they do that, Jason?
Go to patreon.com/Phil Vischer.
Patreon.com/Phil Vischer.
Or just send me money. That would be really nice. Or you could hire me to do your voiceover. That would be great too.
But you can give $2 a month, $5 a month, whatever you want to do if you enjoy these podcasts. It'll help to continue these things.
We have to pay Jason.
Yeah, someone's... I don't pay him. I don't know who pays him. But anyway, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Christian.
You're welcome. Thank you, Josh.
And I forgot to mention, this is number 28, episode 28. And you can kiss this episode goodbye.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever been wrong about anything?
Yes, once.
The shoes, right? The shoes are tragic.